The video opens on a torrential downpour hammering the slick streets of Seoul's underworld. Woo-jin stands in the center of a ransacked mansion, bodies of rival gang members scattered around him. His dark suit is splattered with blood, his neck tattoos glistening wet under flickering overhead lights. He's supposed to eliminate everyone, no witnesses, no exceptions. That's when he sees her, Olivia, cowering behind an overturned dining table, clutching a silver locket that catches the dim light. His hand freezes on his gun. The locket. He knows that locket. Instead of pulling the trigger, he extends his tattooed hand toward the terrified girl. The narrator's voice cuts through the rain. What happens when Korea's most ruthless enforcer discovers the maid he just spared from execution is the daughter he never knew existed? We're thrown into Woo-jin's world, a cold, calculated existence where emotion is a liability. We watch him move through smoke-filled rooms where men bow in fear, through blood-soaked back alleys where he cleans up the mafia's mistakes, through his sterile penthouse apartment where nothing personal exists. No photos. No memories. No family. He is a ghost in an expensive suit, a weapon the organization points and fires. But everything shatters during what should have been a routine elimination. The target, a small household staff caught in the crossfire of a territorial dispute. Orders, leave no one breathing. Woo-jin moves through the darkened estate with mechanical precision until he kicks open a supply closet and finds Olivia hiding inside, her gray hoodie soaked with rainwater from a broken window, her maid's apron torn and bloodied. She should be just another name on his list. Another loose end to tie up. But then she looks up at him with those wide, terrified eyes, and the silver locket around her neck swings forward. Time stops. That locket, he gave it to someone years ago. Someone he loved before the mafia consumed him. Someone who vanished without a trace, taking with her a secret that would change everything. Woo-jin makes a choice that could cost him his life. He grabs Olivia by the arm, drags her through the chaos, and shoves her into the trunk of his car just as his lieutenants arrive to confirm the kill count. Subscribe to see how this unfolds and comment where you're watching from. I will love to say hello to you just to know how far our story is going. The trunk smelled like gunpowder and leather. Olivia pressed her face against the cold metal floor, her body folded into impossible angles as the car lurched through what she assumed were the rain-slicked streets of Seattle's underworld. Every pothole sent shockwaves through her ribs. Every sharp turn made her wonder if this was how her life would end, suffocated in darkness, killed by the same man who'd grabbed her from certain death. She could still see the bodies. The blood pooling on expensive marble floors. The way Woo-jin had moved through that mansion like death itself, his tattooed neck catching the light every time he turned to eliminate another target. And then he'd seen her locket. The car stopped. She heard footsteps, muffled voices speaking in rapid Korean. Woo-jin's voice was calm, authoritative. Someone laughed. The tension in Olivia's chest tightened until she thought her lungs would collapse. Then silence. The trunk opened. Rain poured in, soaking her already drenched hoodie. Woo-jin stood above her, his face unreadable in the shadows of an underground parking garage. Behind him, concrete pillars stretched into darkness. "Get out," he said in perfect English. "And don't make me regret this." Olivia's legs barely worked as she climbed out, stumbling against the car. She expected a bullet. Instead, Woo-jin grabbed her arm and pulled her toward a service elevator, his grip iron-tight but somehow not painful. "You speak Korean?" he asked. She shook her head. "Good. Then keep your mouth shut and your eyes down. You're about to become invisible." The elevator rose in silence. Olivia studied him from the corner of her eye, the way his jaw was set like stone, the elaborate black tattoos that disappeared beneath his collar, the blood on his cufflinks that he hadn't bothered to wipe away. He looked like a man who'd forgotten how to feel anything. But he'd saved her. Why? The elevator opened into a penthouse that looked like it had been designed by someone allergic to color. Everything was white, black, or chrome. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Seattle skyline, rain streaking down the glass like tears. There were no photos, no books, no evidence that a human being actually lived here. You'll stay here, Woo-jin said, his tone flat. You'll clean. You'll cook if you know how. You'll speak to no one. If anyone asks, your staff I hired through a private agency. Your name is now Hannah. Forget whatever you were called before. Olivia, she whispered. My name is Olivia. His eyes flashed with something, recognition? Pain, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Not anymore. Hannah. Say it. Hannah. Again. Hannah. He nodded, then walked to a closet and pulled out a simple black uniform. Change. Burn everything you're wearing. The bathroom is down the hall. There are supplies under the sink. Olivia took the clothes with trembling hands. Why are you doing this? Woo-jin turned away, pouring himself a drink from a crystal decanter. Because I made a mistake tonight. And now we both have to live with it. The first week was a lesson in invisibility. Olivia learned to move through the penthouse like a ghost, cleaning surfaces that were already spotless, preparing meals that Woo-jin barely touched. He left before dawn and returned after midnight, always in a different suit, always with that same emotionless mask. She slept in a small room off the kitchen, barely more than a closet, but it had a bed and a door that locked from the inside. Small mercies. On the 8th day, Woo-jin came home early. Olivia was in the living room, dusting the minimal furniture, when he walked in with blood on his hands. Not splattered. Just on his knuckles, like he'd beaten someone with his bare fists. He walked past her without a word, heading for his study. That's when Olivia noticed the door had been left ajar. She'd been told never to enter that room. It was the one space in the penthouse that was off limits, the one place where Woo-jin disappeared for hours when he was home. Her curiosity had been building like pressure in a sealed container. She waited until she heard the shower running. Then she slipped inside. The study was as minimal as the rest of the apartment, but there was something different here, a single photograph on the desk, face down. Olivia's heart hammered as she picked it up. A young Woo-jin stared back at her, his face softer, his eyes actually alive with something like hope. He had his arm around a beautiful black woman with kind eyes and a bright smile. She wore the same silver locket that now hung around Olivia's neck. Her mother. Olivia's hands shook so violently she nearly dropped the frame. She set it down exactly as she'd found it and was about to leave when she noticed the drawer slightly open. Inside was a leather journal, its pages yellowed with age. She opened it. The first entry was dated 22 years ago. Naomi says she's pregnant. I told her I'd leave the organization. I told her we'd run. But how do you run from men who own cities? How do you escape shadows that know your every move? She deserves better than this life. She deserves better than me. Olivia flipped through pages, her vision blurring with tears as she read about her mother's pregnancy, about Woo-jin's desperate plans to escape, about the raid that went wrong. The final entry was written in a hand that shook with grief. They found her. She ran while she could. The organization thinks she died in Chicago, but I know better. Naomi was too smart to die that easily. She's out there somewhere, with my child. I pray she never tells our baby about me. I pray my child never knows they came from a monster. The shower had stopped. Olivia dropped the journal and ran, but she wasn't fast enough. Woo-jin stood in the doorway, wearing only black pants, his torso a canvas of more tattoos, dragons and demons crawling across his skin. Water dripped from his slicked-back hair. His eyes found the open journal. Then they found her. Get out, he said quietly. You knew her. You knew my mother. I said get out. Naomi Price. That was her name before she married the man I thought was my father. Olivia's voice cracked. She told me before she died. She said my real father was Korean. She said he was a good man trapped in a bad world. She gave me this locket and said if I ever met a man with a matching one, I should run. She pulled the locket from beneath her uniform. It gleamed in the low light. Woo-jin's face transformed into something raw and broken. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an identical locket, the pair to hers, worn on a chain he kept hidden beneath his shirts. They snapped together perfectly. "How old are you?" His voice was barely a whisper. 21. "My birthday is December 15th. He closed his eyes. "Chicago Mercy Hospital. Your mother went into labor during a snowstorm. I couldn't be there. I was cleaning up a mess for the organization." He opened his eyes, and they were wet. "I've spent 21 years believing you both were dead. That I'd gotten you killed by being too weak to walk away when it mattered." Olivia's anger boiled over. "She waited for you. For years, she waited. She kept this locket and told me stories about a man who made her feel safe even though the world around them was dangerous. She died hoping you'd find us. She shouldn't have waited. She should have forgotten me. But she didn't. And now you save me without even knowing who I was. What kind of cosmic joke is that?" Woo-jin moved forward, and for the first time since she'd met him, his mask cracked completely. He reached out like he wanted to touch her face but stopped himself, his hand hovering in the air between them. "You have her eyes," he said. "I should have known. I should have seen it." "What happens now?" Olivia asked. "Do I keep playing Maid? Do we pretend we don't know? Now I teach you how to survive. Because the moment they find out I kept you alive, we're both dead." The training started the next morning. Woo-jin transformed from an absent presence into a relentless instructor. He taught Olivia how to spot a tail in a crowd, how to identify exits in any room, how to read people's intentions from their body language. He taught her where to strike to incapacitate someone twice her size, how to escape zip ties, how to hotwire a car. "You're not trying to win a fight," he explained during one brutal session where he'd attacked her without warning. "You're trying to survive long enough to run." Big difference. Olivia picked herself up from the mat for the 100th time, her body screaming with exhaustion. "Did my mother know how to do this?" "No. That's why she died." The words were harsh, but his eyes held oceans of regret. "She trusted the wrong person. Someone she thought was a friend turned her in for a reward. By the time I found out, it was too late." "How did she die?" Woo-jin was quiet for a long moment. "Quickly. I made sure of that." The meaning behind his words hit Olivia like a freight train. He'd killed the person who betrayed her mother. Maybe others too. This man, her father, had built a mountain of bodies trying to avenge a woman he couldn't save. "Again," he said, pulling her from her thoughts. "And this time, aim for my throat. Stop pulling your punches." But someone was already pulling at threads that would unravel everything. Lieutenant Park Ji-hoon had risen through the organization by being suspicious of everyone. He'd watched Woo-jin for years, looking for any weakness, any crack in the perfect enforcer's armor. And that night at the mansion, something had been off. The body count was one short. Park stood in his own study, reviewing security footage he'd obtained through channels Woo-jin didn't know existed. There, a flash of gray hoodie being shoved into a trunk. A girl. Woo-jin had spared someone. Park smiled. Finally, after all these years, he had leverage. He made a call. "I need surveillance on Woo-jin's penthouse. I want to know everyone who comes and goes. And find out who that girl is." Across the city, Woo-jin's phone buzzed with a message from his inside contact. "Park is asking questions. Be careful." He looked at Olivia, who was reading on the couch, the first time he'd seen her relax since this nightmare began. She'd found his collection of English novels and had been devouring them, sometimes reading passages aloud when she thought he wasn't listening. "We need to talk," he said. She set down the book. That sounds ominous. There's a lieutenant named Park. He's ambitious and dangerous, and he's probably already suspicious about what happened at the mansion. Woo-jin sat across from her. If he finds out about you, he'll use you to destroy me. And then he'll kill us both. So what do? We prepare for war. And we hope it doesn't come. But hope, Woo-jin had learned, was a luxury men like him couldn't afford. For 3 weeks, an uneasy peace held. Woo-jin continued his work for the organization while training Olivia every spare moment. They fell into a rhythm, sometimes adversarial, sometimes almost comfortable. He learned she was studying literature before her world exploded. She learned he'd wanted to be a teacher before the mafia claimed him. One evening, Woo-jin came home to find Olivia had cooked real food, not the simple meals she usually prepared. Korean dishes she'd learned from YouTube videos, attempting to connect with a heritage she'd never known. I probably butchered everything, she said nervously. But I don't know. I thought maybe you'd like something that wasn't takeout. Woo-jin sat at the table, staring at the spread. When was the last time someone had cooked for him? When was the last time anyone had tried to do something kind without wanting something in return? It smells good, he said quietly. They ate in silence for a while before Olivia spoke. Tell me about her. My mother. Tell me about the version of her you knew. So he did. He told her about Naomi's laugh, which could light up the darkest rooms. About her stubborn insistence that he was worth saving, even when he disagreed. About the plans they'd made, a house somewhere quiet, maybe teaching English and Korean to kids, a life so far removed from blood and violence it seemed like fantasy. She sounds amazing, Olivia said. She was. And you're exactly like her. That same stubborn hope that things can be better. He met her eyes. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I couldn't protect either of you. You're protecting me now. 21 years too late. Better late than never. For the first time since she'd met him, Woo-jin smiled. It was small, barely there, but real. The moment shattered when his phone rang. We need to talk, Park's voice was silk over steel. Tomorrow. Come alone. The line went dead. Woo-jin's expression went cold again, the brief glimpse of humanity vanishing behind his mask. Pack a bag, he told Olivia. Only essentials. We're leaving tonight. What happened? Park just made his move. But they'd waited too long. The front door exploded inward in a shower of splinters. Armed men poured through, their weapons trained on Woo-jin. Park entered last, smiling like a cat that had finally caught its mouse. You've been keeping secrets, brother, Park said in Korean, then switched to English for Olivia's benefit. And who is this beautiful creature? A new pet? Woo-jin moved to put himself between Park and Olivia, his body language shifting into combat readiness. This doesn't concern her. Let her go. Oh, but I think it concerns her very much. You see, I did some research. Ran her face through our databases. And do you know what I found? Park pulled out his phone, showing surveillance photos of Olivia. She was at that mansion. The witness you were supposed to eliminate. The one that mysteriously disappeared. The armed men tensed, their fingers tightening on triggers. You violated the most sacred rule, Park continued. No witnesses. No loose ends. The organization survives because we are thorough. And you, Woo-jin, have become sloppy. Sentimental. He practically spat the last word. The council has already voted. You're both to be eliminated. But they've given me the honor of doing it personally. Woo-jin's hand moved to his concealed weapon, but Park's men were faster. A laser sight appeared on Olivia's chest. Don't, Park warned. Unless you want to watch her die first. What do you want? Woo-jin asked, his voice deadly calm despite the impossible situation. I want your position. Your territories. Your reputation. And I want to be the man who finally broke the legendary Woo-jin. Park's smile widened. Tell me, does she know what you are? Does she know how many people you've killed? How many families you've destroyed? He's my father, Olivia said, her voice steady despite her terror. And I know exactly what he is. He's a man trying to do better. Park laughed. Your father? Oh, this is even better than I imagined. The great Woo-jin, brought low by a child he never knew existed. He raised his gun. How poetic. You'll die the way you lived, failing to protect the people you love. The world slowed. Woo-jin saw the finger tightening on the trigger. Saw Olivia's eyes widen. Saw 21 years of regret crystallizing into a single moment of absolute clarity. He'd failed Naomi. He wouldn't fail Olivia. Woo-jin moved. His body became a weapon honed by decades of violence. He struck the nearest gunman's wrist, redirecting the shot into another attacker. Used the falling body as a shield while grabbing the man's weapon. Fired 3 shots in rapid succession, each one finding a target. Run, he shouted at Olivia. The fire escape. Go! But Olivia didn't run. She remembered his training, grabbed a fallen weapon, and did exactly what he'd taught her, aimed for center mass and pulled the trigger. The man about to shoot Woo-jin from behind dropped. I said run, not help. Woo-jin yelled, but there was pride in his voice as he laid down covering fire. They fought their way to the emergency exit, bodies falling behind them in a choreography of violence and desperation. They burst onto the fire escape just as more men poured in from below. The Seattle night was alive with sirens and neon, rain still pouring as if the sky itself was weeping. Up! Woo-jin commanded. The roof! They climbed, their hands slipping on wet metal, bullets sparking off the railings around them. Park's voice echoed from below, screaming orders in Korean. The organization's full resources were being mobilized. Every contact, every enforcer, every corrupt cop on the payroll. They were hunting 2 ghosts who refused to die quietly. The rooftop was a maze of ventilation units and satellite dishes. Woo-jin pulled Olivia behind cover as searchlights swept the area. Helicopter rotors thundered in the distance. There's no way out, Olivia gasped. We're trapped. Woo-jin looked at her, really looked at her, and saw Naomi in every feature. The same determination. The same refusal to give up even when hope was a distant memory. There's always a way out, he said. Your mother taught me that. Park emerged from the stairwell, flanked by a dozen men. His suit was immaculate despite the carnage below. It's over, Woo-jin. You've got nowhere left to run. I stopped running years ago, Woo-jin called back. I'm making a stand. For what? For her? She's a liability. A weakness. Everything we're taught to eliminate. She's my daughter. The words rang out across the rooftop, echoing off steel and concrete. And I will burn down everything I helped you build before I let you touch her. Woo-jin had spent years as the organization's perfect weapon. He knew every safe house, every trafficking route, every corrupt official, every buried secret. He documented it all, kept insurance, never quite trusting the men who controlled him. He pulled out his phone and pressed send. Across the city, emails began arriving at FBI offices, at news stations, at federal prosecutors. Every crime. Every name. Every piece of evidence needed to dismantle the entire Seattle operation. Park's phone began buzzing frantically. His face went pale as he realized what was happening. You just declared war on everyone, Park whispered. No, Woo-jin said. I declared freedom. The standoff lasted only seconds before chaos erupted. But this time, federal agents were already moving in, alerted by the data dump. Park's men scattered, realizing they were about to be caught in a closing net. Park himself raised his weapon one last time, aiming at Olivia with the desperate rage of a man watching his empire crumble. Woo-jin was faster. The shot echoed across the rooftop. Park fell, his body crumpling like a puppet with cut strings. Woo-jin stood over him, smoke rising from his weapon, rain washing the blood from his hands. "For Naomi," he said quietly. "And for every year I lost." Federal helicopters circled overhead now, their loudspeakers demanding surrender. But Woo-jin had planned for this too. He grabbed Olivia's hand and ran toward the building's edge, toward a maintenance ladder that led down to a waiting motorcycle he'd stashed weeks ago, just in case. They disappeared into Seattle's labyrinth of streets, two shadows among thousands, leaving behind a crime scene that would make headlines for years. 3 weeks later, in a small coastal town in Chile, a man with freshly removed tattoos and a young woman with her mother's smile boarded a plane to nowhere in particular. Their passports said they were Kim Tae-young and Kim Soo-jin, a father and daughter starting over after a family tragedy. The documents were forgeries, purchased with money from accounts the organization would never find. The Federal Witness Protection Program had been interested, but Woo-jin had declined. He'd spent his life trusting organizations. Never again. As the plane lifted off, Olivia looked at her father, and he was her father now, not just by blood but by choice. "Where are we going?" "Away. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere we can both learn who we're supposed to be when we're not running." "And if they find us?" Woo-jin's eyes held a hardness that would never completely fade, but there was something else there now too. Something that looked like peace. "Then we remind them why I was the one they sent when they needed monsters. But this time, I'll be a monster protecting something that matters." Olivia leaned her head against his shoulder, exhaustion finally catching up with both of them. Below, the world spread out in endless possibility, a future neither of them had dared to imagine. "Do you think Mom would be proud?" she asked. Woo-jin thought about Naomi's last words to him, whispered in a moment stolen from fate itself, "Be better than what they made you." "I think," he said carefully, "she'd say we're finally learning." The plane carried them away from the past, toward a horizon where a mafia enforcer could become just a man, and a rescued girl could become just a daughter. Where matching lockets meant family, not tragedy. Where the rain would someday wash away more than blood. Where monsters could learn to be human again. And somewhere in heaven, if such places existed for people like them, Naomi smiled. Woo-jin and Olivia had finally found their freedom, a future built on sacrifice, redemption, and the unbreakable bond between a father and daughter who refused to let their past define them. If you're rooting for their new beginning and want to see more stories of survival, second chances, and the power of family against all odds, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Your support means the world and helps us bring you more emotional journeys like this one. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I'd love to say hello and see how far this story has reached across the globe. Are you Team Woo-jin? Do you think he made the right choice? Let's talk about it in the comments. Stay tuned because the next story is coming soon, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. We've got more tales of revenge, redemption, and unlikely heroes who fight against impossible odds. Until next time, remember, sometimes the most dangerous people make the best protectors when they finally find something worth protecting. See you in the next one.